deep in the heart of Central Texas, it's the Best of the Outdoors podcast, brought to you by Texas Fish and Game Magazine, the voice of the Texas outdoor nation. I'm your host, Dustin Vaughn Warnke, author, outdoor writer, videographer, speaker, blogger, and podcaster, and I'm so excited that you've taken the opportunity to download or stream our show online however you are listening. Thank you so much for doing so. Well, we're back with another show. It's that time of the week again, and I'm really excited to have you on board because we are going to talk with a past guest of the Best of the Outdoors podcast in its earlier days, and that is Bill Carey. He is the owner of Striper Express Guide Service, which is based on Lake Texoma. And they fish some other lakes from time to time, but Texoma is kind of their home base where they are. And Bill Carey runs the guide service business with his son being the head guide of the business. He mainly works in the office now. But he's been guiding for over 30 years, and the neat thing about this is that, it's just a legacy and a tradition to fish with him, and we're excited about this because we have so much fun in this interview, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to share this with you. And I apologize in advance. I laugh a lot because Bill is just an awesome character to get along with, and I love to talk fishing, and it's been a while since we've done a fishing podcast, so I figured it's time to get back into that with us entering the fall months and talking about hunting and that kind of stuff in the last few shows. Fishing, I figure, would be kind of a welcomed change for a little while, and so I'm really excited about having this show for you this week. So here's my interview with Bill Carey from Striper Express Guide Service. Well, Mr. Bill Carey, welcome back to the Best of the Outdoors podcast. I know you've been on here before with me. We talked about stripers. We talked about Great Lake Texoma, and there's so much that we can visit about. How are you doing today, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Dustin, and all y'all outdoorsmen and outdoor girls.
All right. In podcast land, right?
You betcha. You betcha. Glad to be back.
Oh, it's great to have you again. And just give me kind of a rundown of what's going on Lake Texoma right now and just what people can expect in general fishing in most lakes in Texas, what people can expect, to find in striper, catfish, white bass. You tell me.
Well, okay, let's start with our best-known fish. Lake Texoma, folks, is considered the striper capital of the United States. I'll expand on that a little. We happen to have the best documented natural spawn of freshwater stripers in the country.
Yes.
There's a reason why. We have 235 tons of salt that leach out of salt domes way up the Red River, which is one of our two major tributaries, up by Vernon, Texas. And it leaches into the lake, and the striper spawns like a salmon. It does not make a bed. It runs upriver, and when the males and females are upriver and the female drops her eggs, they are fertilized, and they have to float. And this little bit of salinity allows that egg to be a little more buoyant. In turn, provides us with the best spawn in the country. So it's reflected in our daily limit. You're allowed twice the Texas state limit of 10. You're allowed 10 stripers per day here per angler. So it's a great lake. She naturally reproduces. Matter of fact, the hatcheries in Wichita Falls come and get our fish to take and make babies for all the rest of the Texas lakes.
Wow, and there's no it's all naturally spawning, so there's no stocking needed on Lake Texoma. Is that correct?
That's right. It hasn't been stocked, and oh Lord, what did we figure out, Dustin? The lake was dammed up and closed the gates in 1944.
Right, 72
so that
years.
Makes it 72 years. And the striped bass was introduced as a test, and then I'm not going to use this for fact, but I would say we haven't had a stocking in 25 years.
Wow. I mean, that's a long time to have a self-sustaining population of big stripers like that. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, our lake is a lake of numbers and size. Mm-hmm. So, anybody that's familiar with the Granddaddy Lakes, the closest are the Arkansas lakes. You can go up there and fish for a couple of days for a trophy, but our lake has got action. So you're going to end up with catching a lot of fish and have a chance of a good fish. And our big fish run 15 to 20 pounds. Those are when you get up into the trophy range.
You talk about some shoulders on some fish. I mean, fight a big old 15-pound, 20-pound striper. I mean, you're dealing with one of the hardest fighting freshwater fishes known to man. You know, I mean, that's amazing.
It truly is. It truly is. We're all sold, and I've been writing it for years, that the striped bass is definitely the strongest fighting fish in freshwater in the United States, no doubt. My son laughs at me because I run the show, folks, and they moved me to the front office a few years ago, and after 25-plus years on the water, and when I do get to sneak out and go fishing with him, I always say, boy, these fish pull hard. And he goes, Dad, every time you come back out, you always say that.
You say the same thing.
But, you know, who says the same thing? Jimmy Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Last time we filmed with Jimmy, he'd look at the camera and he goes, I forgot how hard these fish pull, because, folks, they will stretch your string. We tell the dads that we'll get these kids up here, wear their rear ends out, and send them home snoring.
Send them home sleeping on the drive home, huh?
That's right. And the girls, we're going to send you home with sore tummies, so get ready.
Wow, that's great. I love it. I love talking to you every time we do one of these podcasts. This is just joy of my day right here.
Well, you know, it's a pleasure, Dustin, to talk to outdoors people, and I give all the credit to this great lake. We've been here for a long time, and, man, I just life is good.
That's great. That's really great. So tell me about some of the other species that aren't as well known. I mean, obviously Texoma is known as a striper lake, but what are some other species that are not as well known on Texoma that people should look out for?
Well, let's talk about the largemouth. How about that?
Sure.
All right. Our stockings in the last 15, 20 years have really done well, and we attract large tournaments because this is a large lake and we've got plenty of lodging. So we just had Bass Elite, BASS Elite here, and it was a 2-day tournament, and the guys were, after a 3-day tournament, were ending up with 70-pound sacks. That's a good bass lake.
That's really good.
It was, oh, Lord. We catch, I guess we ought to explain our niche, our outside the box, what Striper Express
Yes,
is
I was
about.
going to bring that up next. One thing Striper Express is known for compared to other guides on the lake.
Yes. Folks, we use artificial lures only. If you like to chunk and wind, I tell folks you called the right place. We do not use live bait. Live bait is a fun way to catch them, but you're just reeling them in.
Right.
When you're with us, you're going out in the morning. You are casting. You are setting the hook. You are fighting the fish. And one of the best things about stripers is they're schooling fish. And you'll be out there fishing, all of a sudden Dustin will say, fish on, and it dominoes down the boat, turns into a fire drill, and you've got fish in the floor, and they react to each other, and, man, it just gets really crazy. So that's one thing great about the striper.
You can't catch them fast enough when they start schooling and they start hitting lures like that.
Oh, it's a blast. You know, we have stories when we're throwing plugs of catching 2 on the same plug.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's just insane. Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, boy, I do too, Dustin. This lake is it's just a natural phenomenon, how it reproduces and just keeps on kicking them out.
Wow, and that's incredible. So you have largemouth bass. How about smallmouth bass?
Smallmouth. Wow. Did we have a year of smallmouth? We found some smallmouth, and we would switch over because you can't, when you start catching these smallmouth, you can't deny them. And I've got a picture of a great customer, Steve Purcell, avid outdoorsman, with, this is no joke, folks, a 7-pound smallmouth.
Wow, that's a huge smallmouth bass. Oh, my goodness.
It is. And the same day, this is a good story. Actually, it was the heat of the summer, right at the end of August, which is rare, but they were going to some smallmouth holes, and Steve likes to fish for just a few hours, and they threw top waters, and they were all using pop R's. They caught 21 smallies by 9:15, and that was the day that they had the 6.5 and the 7. Just incredible morning.
On topwater plugs. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, man.
Oh,
yeah,
my
man.
goodness. I mean, what a lake. Wow.
Yeah, it's just a hoot. Boy, those smallmouth fish, oh, my goodness. And, you know, folks, we all catch bass, but smallmouth, you know, when you start getting up into that, my goodness, those are trophies.
Oh, for sure, especially up in that range. That's for darn sure.
Let's see. Okay, there's the smallmouth. The largemouth are doing great. Just last week, I got a picture of one of the guys caught and released an 8.2. So, you know, that's bigger than any largemouth I've ever caught.
That's a big fish. Yeah, my biggest is in the 5s or 6s. It's not any more than that. I mean, that's great. Wow.
You know, folks, Dustin, help me. How long ago did they put the Floridas in? 25, 30 years ago?
Yeah, it's been about that long, I would say.
Folks, I'm old enough to go back to what we call the native largemouth, and they brought in the Florida strain, and that is a bigger fish, and that's why Texas has now become one of the top largemouth lakes in the country.
Right.
And, boy, they have taken off so well. They're bigger, more genetics, I guess. You know, everybody knows that the world record came from Georgia and right there on the Florida border.
Mm-hmm.
And the largemouth are doing great. And, you know, I think the largest, I want to say 9.2. My son caught a 9.2. Chris Carey is my son. He is head guide, senior guide, and partner. And he fishes over 300 days a year. So you're going to hear me refer to Chris a lot.
Well, and if you look at any of the videos, Bill, of the videos that I edit for you, at least the ones that you catch the most fish is typically Chris. I mean, he's the one that knows the fish the best, you know, on that lake, and how to work those lures and how to bring those in. You know, I've done a couple of videos in the past for you, and it's just amazing watching him work. I mean, he's a pro. He really is.
Oh yeah, yeah. No nepotism involved. He's just he's a good one. You know, folks, we run 7 boats here, and Chris is head senior guide. So he's when I moved off to the front office, Chris became the media guy. He's the one that does all the filming, and he's the front guy now with all TV articles. And if he wasn't fishing today, he'd be talking to Mr. Dustin. But the old man's going to talk to you all about it.
I like talking to you. You're fun.
Well, I've never been accused of being quiet.
Yeah, that's right.
I will talk fishing.
That's right. When we talk fishing, we talk. And when we normally get on the phone with each other, I mean, we talk for a good, 30 minutes or an hour about fishing, you know. And it's just a blast. It's fun, you know. And,
you betcha.
I love talking fishing. But, yeah, the other best-kept secret that we talked about on the podcast the last time you and I hooked up together was catfish. Is that right?
Oh, my Lord. Yes, sir, Bob. Folks, Lake Texoma, like we said a minute ago, was built in 1944. So before that, it was the Red River. This lake is the Red River Valley. Everybody's heard of that.
Yes.
And our other major tributary is called the Ouachita. It comes across Oklahoma. And I guess we ought to explain where we are, huh?
Yes, I mean, definitely. I kind of explained it in the intro of the podcast. We're kind of on, y'all are kind of on between the on the Red River, on Lake Texoma, between Texas and Oklahoma. Is that right? You're on the border.
That is correct.
Right.
That is correct. They dammed up the Red and the Ouachita and made this great lake. It's a big lake. This lake has 580 miles of shoreline and it's 90,000 acres.
That's a huge lake. I mean, we have some big lakes in Texas anyway. If you look at Toledo Bend, that used to be the largest one, you know, in the nation there for a while before the other ones started getting built. And then you've got Sam Rayburn, you've got, you know, Falcon, Amstead, and South Texas, West Texas. You've got some big lakes, but Texoma is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's a huge lake.
It is. It's so diverse. That's what makes things so good. So, we were talking about the catfish. Probably the most popular here, folks, is the high-fin blue cat. Our cats get huge. We happen to snag them. We've got a little secret here. We allow, you know, we call it gravy. When people come and spend the night, we will let them fish our dock.
Ooh. That
is where all the stripers, white bass are clean. So there's a pile underwater of all these carcasses, and the big cats come in there and nibble on them.
Huh.
So there's every guide service has their own catfish hole. It's like a baited hole. I posted on Facebook a 54-pounder that we had a client catch last week. And when I mentioned it to Chris, he goes, stand by. And he sends me 4 pictures of 30s to 50s that he said, these are fish we caught this week. And I went,
oh, my.
Yeah. We had 2 50s last week. And, folks, I say that, and I do realize that is a fish of a lifetime.
It is.
I try and tell my guides, don't get complacent. These fish are truly a trophy. And we should definitely let everybody know that these fish are too magnificent to clean.
Right. They're too big.
We catch and release.
Right.
We catch and release. Yes, sir. Dustin and I were talking about this, folks, and some of these catfish, Lake Texoma, held the world record for 15 years at 121 pounds.
Goodness, that's a hoss of a fish. I mean, you talk about a fish of a lifetime. That's a lake record, though. I mean, that's wow.
It was huge. And my personal best, I say mine, a client, we were out there slabbing, and he stuck a fish, and I didn't know who was going to win. He had his hands full. We got it up into the boat, we weighed it, and we took pictures, and we let it go, and our personal best is 87.
Gee whiz, that's amazing. And, I mean, that all being said, I've never talked about this on the podcast before, but I'm part of Crosswater Outfitters, which is a jug fishing ministry, and we go out on Lake Conroe and Lake Buchanan in Central and East Texas, and it's nothing for us on cut shad to catch, some that are, I've held 40s, I've held 50s, I've held 160, on every weekend we go out there, which is twice a year usually in December and January. And, after you catch a bunch of big catfish like that, you kind of people kind of marvel at you. But I mean, after a while, it's just kind of like, oh, it's just another day on the water, but you talk about a fish of a lifetime. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's awesome.
It truly is. I tell people that come in, I said, hey, you're welcome to fish down there. It's gravy. It's no charge. And we get tremendous stories. Of course, guys, the good eaters are the 3, 5, 6 pounders.
Right.
Those are all the good eaters.
Your smaller fish, right.
And you will catch channel cat, too. Go ahead.
No, you're telling me that you're catching some 50s off of your dock. I mean, off of the fish cleaning station. I mean, that's something to speak of right there. I mean, normally you got to go out on the water and set a bunch of jug lines. That's what I typically do with my fishing ministry. And you're telling me that you guys are just, rod and reel fishing right off of the side of your dock where you're cleaning fish and catching big old 50-pounders. That's great.
I know. I
mean, you talk about gravy. I think there's a better word for that, but I mean, gravy is fine, I guess. I think that's awesome.
Oh, it is. It's great. We just love to see people catch fish. Folks, that's one thing about being a professional guide. We enjoy seeing you catch fish more than we do. It's
right.
It's what we do. It's the passion that we hold.
Exactly. It is that passion, and it is about seeing, especially you and I talked about in the last podcast, kids catching fish, which is something I'm huge about. I wrote a article on our fishgame.com website not too long ago about panfish 101, about just the basics of taking your kids bank fishing on any given river or lake, what to use, just to get them started on the basics before you take them out on a big guided trip like this. Of how to reel, how to set the hook, and those kind of things. And I think that's important. But I mean, you guys have a blast with the kids, but almost as much as you have a blast with the adults, right?
Oh man, we are so big on kids.
I know you are.
The business end of it, guys, it's the only discount we offer. They are our future fishermen.
Yes.
I've always said that when a child grows up and he comes to a crossroads where there is a left and a right turn, if you get them in the outdoors, hunting, fishing, hiking, kayaking, anything, that they're most likely to take that right turn and make the right decision.
Right.
So we're big on kids. Oh, my goodness. We've got so many stories. And being in business this long, we've seen these kids grow up and now start bringing their kids. So that's a blast.
You were telling me on our last show, one of the things you will see on your calendar is, 3 gen or something like that, where it's 3 generations of fishermen that it came back when you were guiding, in your early days. We're taking the grandfather, taking the father as a kid, now taking the father's kids. Is that right?
You got it, brother. I'm old-fashioned, folks. I do embrace technology. E-commerce the computer is our backbone, but I do everything in a handwritten planner.
Right.
And Chrissy, my assistant, who's been here a couple of years, first month she was here, she took the planner to enter it into our operating reservation system, and it said Dustin Warnick, and it said, 3 people, 3 gen, Gen. She said, "What is 3 gen?" I said, and I highlighted, circle it in red. I said, "That's 3 generations." Just like Dustin said, that is a grandfather, a father, and a grandson. And folks, there's nothing better. Pass it on.
You talk about a legacy of passing on to generation. That's beautiful, and it's great. You must feel so proud, to have that kind of legacy.
I'm very humble because I give all the credit to the lake. I guess I'll tell you one of our rules. I tell all our guides through the years, here's the best way to make this happen. Leave your ego at the dock.
Right.
Go out there and treat people the way you want to be treated.
That's great.
Never let the tail wag the dog. You're the captain. Catch a bunch of fish and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And if that goes off, you've done your job.
That's right.
Guides have a tendency to be a little bit egotistical, but I've always joked. You can go out here and you can catch fish so often, so many days in a row, and I teach them all. Don't crow, don't cry, because just about the time you think you're the gift to these fish, they don't let you down gently.
They school you, as it were, right?
Oh. Captain Chris just went through that. He had 100 fish on Friday, and Saturday he didn't hurt them.
Didn't inflict any pain on the population at all, huh?
I know it.
It can turn off as quick as it turns on. That's fishing for you.
He called me, and I said, and he wasn't the only boat. We had 7 boats out, and probably 3 out of the 7 struggled. And I just said, it wasn't your day.
Right.
Go home, lick your wounds. We offer people lucrative makeups. And, what's funny is all 3 of these charters that struggled had 12 to 15 fish. So that tells you how great this lake is. We didn't get skunked.
Right. No,
we just
great.
didn't. We really don't think we earned our keep if we don't catch over 15 fish.
Uh-huh. No, that makes sense. And tell me this, one of the things that has turned on, even when striper fishing isn't, just hotter than all get out, one thing that you guys do really well is sand bass or white bass. Is that right?
Oh, my goodness. Gracious. Folks, how do I start?
Where do you start?
Southern Oklahoma. Again, we are on the Texas-Oklahoma border. The lake divides the 2 states. We are an hour and 20 minutes from downtown Dallas, 2 hours from downtown Fort Worth, 2.5 hours from Oklahoma City. And so we're right here on the border. And we all, North Texas, South Oklahoma, with the El Nino year before last, just made the most prolific white bass spawns. And a white bass will live to be 4 years old. The striper will live to be 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We have been, I was joking there for 6 weeks. We were calling ourselves sand bass express.
I love it. That's great.
We had a striper sand bass mix, and then when the fish moved, traditionally, the fish will move up onto the flats about the 1st of August. They come out of deep water. Well, the sand bass came, and the stripers stayed down in the deep water. So I tell everybody that calls their expectations, and I say, who can drive by a school of surfacing white bass to go catch the elusive striper right now? I mean, who drives by schooling fish?
Right. Nobody does. Yeah,
So,
I mean, you've got to stop and fish that school, you know. I mean, that's just what it's about.
I had 2 dads and 2 sons come up here, and they kept. Now, when I say keep, there's no minimum length. The limit is incredible. It's 25 per person per day.
Wow, that's great.
So I tell people your average day, you know, I try and stay conservative. I don't want to throw the guide under the bus, you know, but I say on a good day, you're going to clean anywhere from 25 to 50. We clean them, 25 to 50 fish, but you'll have caught and released another 50 of smaller fish that we just call them rejects. Let them grow. These white bass, I've got pictures of 19-inch white bass. I've never heard of such a thing.
Holy smokes. And I mean, you talk about constant action. I mean, I've seen some of the videos that I've been editing for you that are you know, just one person hooks up, the other person hooks up, both people bring in, you know, some fish, 2 on a line, you know, because y'all have so many. I mean, that's crazy, you know?
Right.
I mean,
right.
Wow.
Yeah, so that has been great. Now, we'll talk about the striper in a minute because in the last 10 days, these last 2 little cool fronts have kicked the stripers off. But the sand bass, just incredible. I've got pictures that are just overflowing coolers. And I want to explain something to the people. These fish are here to harvest. There's nobody that is more conservation-minded than Striper Express Guide Service.
Right.
So they have to be managed. Just like deer, just like game, you have to manage them. So I had that 2 dads and 2 sons come in here, and they cleaned 118. We call them magnums, folks. These fish will go 3 pounds.
Magnum fish. I love it.
We, of course, posted it, put it out everywhere, and I got a call from some conservationists. We won't say who they are, but I'll give you their initials, PETA.
Oh, yes. Yes, I've heard of them.
And a post, a quote, a statement, a comment on the post was, "Did you have to keep that many?" And I said, "Well, thank you for, you know, saying that, but this guy today was catching fish for a church fundraiser."
Right.
Now, if you notice, these fish are huge. These are the biggest ones. Chances are they are in their last year.
Yes.
So we released another 100 that day and do daily when the sand bass are running. So, you know, I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but those fish were like a buck that is not going to be there the next year.
Right. They've run their course, in other words, the big ones have.
Right. Their life is that they're in their last year of their life, and oh man, sweet meat, good eating.
Oh, yeah.
You know, folks, the sand bass is a native fish, white bass, and it is the baby cousin of the striped bass. Mm-hmm. So they do the same exact thing. They school, they splash, they surface, they run all together, and like Dustin said, we tie a little 8-ounce jig of 18, 20 inches above the slab, and you will catch doubles. Now, that's so much fun. Now, when you're out there doing that, and all of a sudden your rod wraps against the boat and almost breaks it, you've got 2 stripers that took both those hooks.
Oh, my goodness. You're in trouble then.
Oh, buddy. Two stripers fighting and swimming different directions.
Golly.
It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. We've been doing that for years. We've got a nickname. We call that the Double Trouble Rig.
Double Trouble Rig. I love it. That's great.
It works great. Now, let's back up a little bit. I started fishing this lake in 1977. That year, I caught a white bass, and my guide got excited. And, folks, I came from a lake where it was mostly white bass. So I said, well, what's the big deal? He said, you don't know the history of this lake. So before the stripers were introduced, this lake was legendary white bass lake. They still have sand bass festivals in Madill, Oklahoma, right across the lake every year. The old timers told me that literally you could see 100-acre schools of surfacing white bass. Now, when the striper was introduced, I was a touring bass pro, and everybody thought that the stripers would eat every living creature in fresh water. Everybody went, oh no, this isn't going to work. Well, the sand bass population went down and the stripers went up here, but my guide explained, we had a threadfin shad freeze. And he said it knocked them down so hard the stripers were prolific and took over. And let's explain about the shad, shall we?
Sure.
Okay. There's two types of food forage for the striper. 92+% of their diet is shad. There's two types of shad. There is the threadfin shad that will grow to, let's just say, 4 inches.
Right.
Then we have the gizzard shad. The gizzard shad will grow to a foot long. So having a threadfin freeze, which happens, folks, and usually in January when there's been a very hard winter and the bait is in shallow water and you have a die-off.
Right.
So that happened to happen, I guess a few years before I started in 77, and the stripers took over, and this new run on white bass is just phenomenal, just unbelievable. And there is 150 licensed guides on this lake.
Ooh. No
and
competition.
Everybody.
Gee whiz, man. You never told me that before. Wow.
People ask me through the years, why don't I have Striper Express on our boats? And I go, because today is your day to catch fish, not their day.
Mm-hmm.
Because, folks, when you have the guide boats of choice, people tend to follow you. And if you put two Falcon boats, which is the guide boat of choice, together, you're going to draw a crowd. There's just no doubt about it. So we've got all sorts of tricks. I've had people before, I go, hey, here comes a boat, and they're really looking at us hard. If you don't have a fish on, fold your arms and look like you're mad at me.
I love it. That's great. What a tactic.
And we sit down and fish a lot because this lake will get pretty rough. But, of course, when we're standing up and fishing, that's when I say, sit down, sit down, sit down. There's a boat coming in. And we're very friendly. If somebody's coming in to fish, we use hand signals. We tell them, slow down. I point to where the fish are. But then there's people that are pleasure boaters that I've even had people on board in my career that go, I had no idea this is what this was. I'd be in my boat and I'd just run right over them. These are really fish schooling. And I go, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had no idea when these splashes were happening. Because, folks, we're talking about the surfacing. When the fish drive the bait to the surface, the bait can run, but it can't hide once it gets to the surface. So the fish literally bust. They splash, and you can see them for miles.
Whoa. And that's another thing we've talked about many times before, you and I have, on watching the birds, which are some of your best fish finders on the lake, versus your electronics. Watching those seagulls, they're seagulls, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, I just want to make sure I had that right. Yeah, watching those birds, and you'll find the fish underneath those birds because they're catching those shad that are driving to the surface, right?
That's correct. And the birds have arrived right now. They come every late September, and they will stay here until the last of April. They are what we call the best free fish finder you can get.
That's great. That's a great term to use. That's good.
Oh, folks, these birds have such great eyes. They can see. And right now, we're going out early in the morning. We're throwing topwaters for an hour, hour and a half. And it depends on the sun and the cloud cover because we're catching these fish in very shallow water, and they are light-sensitive fish. So the bait moves into the shallows. The fish follow. We blind cast. That means they're not surfacing. They're just there.
Right.
So we cast these big 6-inch poppers, and we catch the fish. And then when we stop that, depending on cloud cover, hour, 90 minutes, we pull out our field glasses, binoculars, and look for the birds.
How cool.
They will get up in literally hundreds of school, and they're starting to come in, and there'll be more and more and more. Just had some guys stop by the office that are from Denver. They come in, 4 guys come in 4 times a year, and they asked me, they said, we want to get back sooner than spring. And I said, hey, there's no doubt that the planet is warming.
Right.
December has turned into our second favorite month of the year. Now, what we do is you can be pulling out of the harbor, and maybe, if you're lucky, take your pick of which school of birds you want to go to.
How cool is that? Wow.
Again,
that's
folks,
awesome.
Schooling fish, schooling birds. What we do, I want to talk about the technique.
Yes.
What we do, folks, is when you're motoring up a mile away, you look and watch which way the birds are going. Now, the birds are always going to be flying into the wind, but if the fish are going downwind, you make a big, wide circle, and you stop, and the fish are coming to you, and you're ready. You don't ever want to drive through them because that'll spook them.
Right.
And when we have these big groups of birds and schools of fish, we just make, as soon as they pass us and it's over, we make another big wide loop. Never turn and go straight into the school of fish. Just make a big wide loop and get way ahead of them and let them come to you. And, it's just a blast. And I wrote a story last year. Got some regulars that come in from Iowa, and these are serious outdoor fishermen. And the story was about they never had to start the motor.
Oh, really? That's cool.
They got on a school of fish with a north wind on the Oklahoma bank. And the school stayed together. There wasn't a lot of boat pressure to spook them, to bust them up.
Right.
And the guide literally fished south to the Texas bank without even starting his motor. They had 5-hour drift and never started the motor and were catching fish the whole time.
That's just fun right there. I don't care who you are.
I had to interview those guys and get the story and write it.
Right.
That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, it is as good as it gets. That's great. Never have to start the engine up. Just coast with the fish.
I know. It was a great story. Folks, I do love this lake, and I hope you put up with my passion, because
yes.
I can get revved up over Lake Texoma.
That's great. And so right now the topwater's starting to be strong. I'm reading this from other guys in other Texas lakes, for those of you that aren't listening that aren't going to Texoma. But, topwaters for both whites and stripers are starting to get hot right now, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, now it's going to be a multi-species trip. So you'll catch white bass and stripers.
Right.
The topwater started last week, and that little cool front that came in last weekend was the final cool front that drops the temperature down below 77 degrees.
Sure.
That's when it starts. It peaks from 75 degrees all the way down to 65. So that means that we usually have these fish on the shallow banks until about the first 10 days of November. So it's topwater time at Texoma right now.
That's great. So it's a great time to call and book a trip, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. The topwater is worth the price of admission by itself.
Right.
It's so exciting.
It's explosive.
I
mean, you and I have talked about that before, too. I didn't mean to cut you off. It's explosive, how those fish just get up and hit that topwater lure. I mean, there's nothing else like it.
Oh, it's incredible. They're so voracious feeders. Folks, I'm a writer, but I'm Striper Express first and foremost.
Right.
And I've written so many articles about topwater, and I'm writing one right now that I explain to the people that this is not like there's not a learning curve. All you need to do is get your plug out there, because these fish aren't hiding out on the shady side of that stump like a largemouth would.
Right.
They can be anywhere. So I say, just get your plug out. Anytime your plug is in the water, you're in the strike zone. Mm-hmm. So I've got stories of people lifting their plug out of the water. The last plug is out of the water, and a fish comes from under the boat. Kaboom!
That's great.
Literally come out of the water, grab that last hook, and this is what it sounds like. Zzz, 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 pow!
It slams it. Wow.
It just slams it. The rod wraps against the boat, and folks, you have the drag on a reel, But a lot of people don't realize the rod tip fights that fish is as important as the adjustment on the drag.
Yes.
So when a fish is so strong, that close to the boat, it pulls the rod tip straight towards it. People get upset when they lose them. It's so exciting that they even throw water on you.
You're in the splash zone, not just the strike zone, Bill.
I wrote a story about a guy turns around and he's wet all around his below his belly button.
Right. His whole bottom half is soaked.
and we made a joke that he got so excited that he had an accident. Well, it wasn't an accident. That fish turned tail and threw water right up in his lap, and he was soaking wet.
Splashed him. Wow. That's great.
But what I know, I love it. What I explain to people is, I go, even a seasoned pro cannot get his rod tip up fast enough. These fish are so strong. Mm-hmm. They've got every advantage. They took the hook right at the boat, and that's what it sounds like. It sounds like a 22 going off when it snaps your line.
Wow. I mean, what other sport in the world besides maybe hunting do you get that kind of feeling, that kind of rush, you know? I mean, this is why we fish right here, you know? Well,
Jimmy Houston one time, Jimmy is a friend of ours, folks, and if you don't know who he is, he's one of the icons in freshwater fishing, had a TV show for 35 years, and just a fine fella. Jimmy one time asked me, he said, Bill, ask me what my favorite fishing is. And so the camera was rolling. I said, Jimmy, what's your favorite fishing? And he said, throwing Cordell pencil poppers for stripers at Lake Texoma with Striper Express. Whoa. And I grinned and I went, you can't buy that kind of advertising.
No, that's a perfect endorsement for Striper Express right there. That's great. Wow.
I hope, folks, that we've explained what topwater is.
Yes.
It is throwing a floating surface plug out and the fish comes up and nails it. And we've got stories. A fish, it simulates a crippled shad. Mm-hmm. So the fish, curiosity goes, well, there comes a fish that's hurt. He's running across the surface. And sometimes they will tail flap it to stun it.
Right.
And the plug will fly 3 feet up in the water, in the air.
You'll just see it pop up and then fall back down, huh?
Right. And I tell people, I try and give them every tip and instruction I can before we go out in the morning. And because this happens so fast and it's so exciting. And I tell them, I go, okay, if your plug disappears and the fish comes up, he slaps it, it lands back on the water, and he comes up and he swirls on it and it disappears. And I say, don't set your hook until you feel that fish pulling back.
Until you feel that pressure, right.
Because we joke, it's like a toilet flushing. Boom, the plug disappears. And trust me, folks, that plug, if you set the hook, it comes back a lot faster than it went out.
Right. Right back at you, too.
Yeah. We call it incoming round.
Incoming round in the boat.
Yep. Hooks on the fish, not the fisherman.
Man. How much fun is that?
You wait for the fish. Oh man, you can tell I get excited. Dustin, get in your truck and come up here and we'll go in the morning.
Yeah, that's right. I'm heading to Lake Texoma. I mean, that's just, what a blast. And I mean, this isn't the only lake that this is possible, but I mean, this is a dynamite of a lake for topwater fishing is what I'm trying to make the point for this podcast. I mean, this is just a blast. You can do this on other lakes for white bass and striper, but I mean, it is, it's unbelievable on your lake. It really is.
We're just so blessed. Just so blessed to have this natural phenomenon in this great fishery.
Is there anything else? We're about at our time here for the podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to visit and give folks a way to contact you as well? I don't want to give out the wrong number at the end here. Okay.
Well, of course, right now, folks, the legendary fall fishing is cranking up. Did I mention December being our second favorite month of the year?
Yes. What's your favorite month then? Your top favorite?
May.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that on the other podcast. That's right. I forgot about that.
And it's pretty easy to reason why. We were all lining up. Clients are calling by the Super Bowl to get in for the beginning of the spring topwater.
Right.
So We start looking for the fish mid-April, and usually the last week of April, we find them. People are lined up. We pre-book, and May is top water for the whole month. So there again, folks, we're talking top water.
Right.
It's just a hoot. The fall fishing is happening right now. These fish go year-round. They're voracious feeders. Just a heck of a sport fish. Great for young and old alike. And I'll tell you how to reach us.
Absolutely. Please do.
All right. If y'all got a pen, folks, I'll give you our phone number.
Mm-hmm.
Our phone number is 903-786-4477. That's 903-786-4477. And you can easily find us on the net at striperexpress.com.
And I will put those notes in the show notes. People get on a podcast. I don't know if you know how this works yet, Mr. Bill, but on a podcast, when it's downloaded or when it's streamed, there's a text portion of it, and I'll put all that information there so people can just click through and see your link to your website, or they can just see your number and call you directly. So we'll do that.
Awesome. Hey, we have packages. We have lodging here at the marina. One thing I'd like to say in closing, beginning November 15th, we board and depart at 10:30 a.m. It all has to do with water temperature.
Right.
Water temperature first. It makes for a simple drive for most. 10:30 board and depart. And number 3, 10 to 15 degrees of solar heat on your back in January and February is welcome.
It feels good, yeah, with the cold weather and everything, sure.
So you can drive in if you're within a couple hours, pretty easy. And a lot of people will come in and fish and spend the night and go back out the next day, and then when we're done, they just push on. But we've got great lodging, we've got packages. Y'all just come a running, folks.
Well, and then also the other thing I don't want to forget to add is that you do corporate business-to-business, outings and different corporate trips and incentive trips and that kind of stuff as well. Isn't that right?
Oh, yes, sir. Yep. Tomorrow we've got an 18-man group coming in.
Wow.
Friday we've got a 27-man group. And on Saturday we've got another 18-man group. I guess we didn't tell folks. We run a 7-boat fleet, and with pre-bookings and you call in time, we can fit you in most of the time. But, yes, we do cater to groups. It's a great way to reward the team. And, of course, entertaining clients, if they like to fish, they don't forget your phone number when you take them fishing at Lake Texoma.
Right. That's a memory that lasts a lifetime. It really is.
Oh, it's such a great lake. Dustin, it's a pleasure. I give the lake all the credit. We're Striper Express. We've been here for 33 years.
That's great. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast, Mr. Bell.
My pleasure. And all you outdoorsmen and girls and kids, have a great year. And if you want to catch some stripers at Lake Texoma, just give us a call.
Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Oh my goodness, I laughed so hard. I apologize for all the laughter. I just get excited about this stuff. I love talking fishing. I love everything that has to do with the outdoors, and I especially love doing this podcast with you every couple of weeks because we have a lot of fun sharing with each other, on a show where I do an interview. I have a lot of fun sharing with the other person the different things that you can do in the outdoors, and I just have a blast sharing that with you, in turn, the listeners. So I'm really excited about having the opportunity to do that. And please be sure to check out our website, fishgame.com, at the Texas Outdoor Nation with Texas Fish and Game. And also you can visit me at dustinsprojects.com, all one word. I have definitely some really good content on my website, hunting videos, fishing videos, a lot of different articles that I've written and links to things that I've done on fishgame.com and in the magazine and different things like that, which is exciting. And also, if you've not done so, please leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you found the show, and please subscribe to the podcast so that way every Thursday you get your new podcast downloaded on your mobile device or however you listen to the show. And that's a way we can stay in touch. If you register on Podbean, you can do that, or you can do that, of course, on your smartphone with whatever RSS or media player you use for podcasts. So that's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, thank you so much again for reading, watching, and listening, and have an awesome day in the outdoors.